My check 1212. It's the Y2K collector. And usually when it comes to collecting retro games, I try to avoid the console that is the most hype. I try to avoid the console that's getting the most attention. I try to avoid the console that everyone is trying to collect for, primarily because one, whenever a console is super hype, the competition is at an all-time high and people are just really losing their minds and literally fighting each other to try and get games for that console. So I just would rather avoid the headache and the hassle and just go collect for something else. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is because a console's price tag and the games for that console, the price tag associated with that console is going to be, again, at an all-time high because it's in really high demand. It's something that everyone is trying to collect for. So I typically try to run in the other direction and find other consoles to collect for. Now, I know that for a large part of the last 5 years, especially since like 2020, the GameCube was one of the most hyped consoles ever. I mean, uh, especially on YouTube, rather. Thanks to a lot of YouTubers, the GameCube was the console that everyone was looking for. Everyone was running some type of GameCube challenge. Everyone was collecting full sets, selling the full sets, and collecting them again. Like I was seeing people collecting full GameCube sets like once a year, and it just became something that honestly, I just kind of got tired of it, really. I really wasn't buying much for the GameCube. I really was kind of like going in the other direction. I think when everyone was really collecting for the GameCube heavy, that's when I was collecting like Sega Saturn import games. Like that's how far left I went with it. So here now in 2025, as I look to see where I can get the best bang for my buck, I'm trying to figure out what is the most hype console, because whatever the most hype console is, that's exactly what I'm not going to collect for. And I'm trying to figure out if in 2025 the most hype retro console is still the GameCube, because it's hard for me to think of another console that's been more hype than the GameCube. Now, a close second, in my opinion, would be the Nintendo 64. I know a lot of people were really big on N64. A lot of people were trying to collect full N64 sets. And that was another very, very hype console. And it almost seemed like you couldn't lose if you were selling those types of games. Resellers wanted N64 games because those were fast sellers for them. And now, it's kind of interesting where we're at. Now, based on what I'm seeing in my dealings with resellers, because let's be honest, a lot of times when you're buying video games, if you're not buying them from a retailer, you're buying them from a reseller 9 times out of 10. And so in my dealings with resellers, a lot of them are looking for the games that are fast and easy sells for them. They want games that are quick and easy to flip. And usually when I come to a reseller looking for a trade, if I have like GameCube games that I'm willing to trade, that usually piques their interest. But these days, it doesn't seem like GameCube packs as much of a punch as it used to. It's either that or I'm seeing other consoles that are starting to, kind of gain a little bit more hype behind them. So one of the consoles that come to mind is definitely the PlayStation 2. Now, I know that there are a lot of folks that are really into the PlayStation 2. I don't think the PlayStation 2 has seen the same level of hype that the GameCube did. But there definitely is interest in PlayStation 2. The difference with the PlayStation 2, though, is that it's obviously a much larger library than the GameCube. And so there's a lot more like fluff and lower tier games that I don't think as many people are as hype over. But there are still games on the PS2 that people still want. When you think about games like God Hand, Dual Hearts, Drakengard 2, you think about the Silent Hill games, Haunting Ground, the Fatal Frame games, you think about Def Jam Fight for New York, you think about the Shadow Heart series, you think about the Xenosaga Xenosaga 3, games like Futurama, versus Capcom 2, Grandia 3. The list kind of goes on, but it's a short list of games for the PlayStation 3 that I think a lot of people are like, okay, I really want to collect these games, right? And I don't know if there's enough games in the PlayStation 2 library. Like, there's definitely enough games in the PlayStation 2 library to hype it up. But I think those games get diluted with the large amounts of shovelware and fluff games and just lower tier games. And when I say shovelware or fluff games, I'm talking about the countless amount of sports games, right? There's like all the NHL 2Ks, the NHL games, the old NFL games, Madden games, NBA games, NBA Live, NBA 2K. I mean, there are, hundreds of games that make up the PlayStation 2 library that are these types of games. Along with like a lot of the kid games, the big game hunting, the hunting games, the fishing games, the simulator games, the kids games, the Disney games. So much of the PlayStation library is made up of a lot of that type of stuff. And then, once you kind of get past all of that, there is that, that next level of quality games that just aren't super expensive. Those are like your Rogue Galaxies, your Dark Cloud 2s, your Dirge of Cerberus, Incredible Hulk, that tier of game, which is still good. It's just not super hype and it's not sought after. So, again, it takes me back to, I feel like the PlayStation 2 definitely has a little bit of hype. It's gained some hype traction behind it. But I think a lot of handhelds, honestly, have had some hype, built around them as well. When you think about, the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy Color, the DS, there's been a little bit of hype around that. But I can't think of a console, to be honest with you, in 2025 that has seen the same level of hype that the GameCube received over the last 4 years. I'm not seeing it. We saw that there was a little bit of a rush when it came to like the Xbox 360, especially once there was a mention of the store closing, the online store closing. And so I would say maybe last year there was like a lot of hype around the 360, but the 360 hype kind of went away as fast as it came. It kind of died down pretty quick. Whereas like with the GameCube, I feel like the hype around the GameCube definitely had some sticking power. And there was definitely more people like really clinging to that GameCube hype more so than they did with like the Xbox 360. Now, I do feel like, even in 2025, no one's going to turn their nose up at Super Nintendo games. No one's going to turn their nose up at like certain NES games. The Sega Genesis just continues to be, retro gaming stepchild for some reason, which I don't know why, because the Genesis is freaking awesome, man. Like, I don't know what the deal is. I think it's like a mental thing. I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's like a mental thing. I think it's like a group think thing. I think it's like just people following people, either that or just some people just kind of grew up with Nintendo. That was all they had available to them. And they just never really got involved with the Sega Genesis. That's just the way it's been. But I'm really interested to know because I'm really torn on this. I'm seeing little pockets of hype pop up around different consoles and different retro gaming libraries here and there. Like I said, we saw it with the 360. We saw it a little bit with the PS3. There's a little bit of PlayStation 2 hype. The Super Nintendo is always going to have its pocket of hype beasts. But what console in 2025 has the most hype? Let me know down in the comments so I can avoid it. I'll catch you in the next video. Take it easy.